Welcome to the report for day 447 of the war in Ukraine. This is the account and thank you for joining me. Today I have two extra news segments for you. The first is regarding the latest Russian mass missile attack. The second is regarding the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe summit in Iceland. I also have two articles to point out and the Kyiv Independent's Investigative Stories newsletter to share. All other updates are grouped into the usual situation inside Ukraine, the occupied territories, Russia and Belarus, and international developments. Before we start the news though, the flashpoints along the front. Bakhmut. Ukrainian units continue to advance on the flanks outside Bakhmut, pushing back Russian forces. Inside Bakhmut, the situation is the other way around. Wagner units managed to penetrate Ukrainian defenses between the Nest and Constructor fortresses, capturing the three high-rise buildings that made up the Horse fortress and reaching the 00506 road. Ukraine will need a successful counterattack here to push the occupiers back, or it remains a matter of time before the last positions also fall. Meanwhile, the acting head of the DPR, Denis Pushilin, announced the transfer of additional units to Bakhmut to strengthen the flanks and stop the Ukrainian advance. Ukraine's Deputy Defense Minister Hanna Maliar reported that Ukrainian troops have recaptured about 20 square kilometers of territory from Russia around the eastern city of Bakhmut in recent days, with heavy fighting going on in the city. And now for an article in Russian I want to point out. The translated title is "You really are a terrorist. Just tell them you don't love Russia." Russia's Federal Security Service has been recruiting former ISIS fighters over the years as their agents in countries like Ukraine. According to Meduza, Burzan Kultanov, a native of Russia who went to Syria to fight for the Islamic State, became disillusioned when he realized that it was not fighting for Muslims but creating chaos. After two attempts, Kultanov left Syria for Turkey. He tried to apply for political asylum, but officials discovered his past involvement with ISIS, resulting in him being sent back to Russia. Kultanov was given 4 years and 4 months in prison if he would cooperate with Russian intelligence. Upon being released in 2019, Kultanov was told that he would be sent to Ukraine, where they were interested in having their agents. More specifically, Russian special services wanted him to infiltrate the Chechen and Tatar battalions fighting on the side of Ukraine. Sources cited by Meduza said there are numerous cases of such agents in Ukraine and elsewhere where they are tasked with spying, trying to corrupt people of interest, or even committing contract killings. I will include the Google translation to the article. Do consider checking it out, please. And now for the next article I wanted to point out, titled "When Dying Stops Being Scary. Worn-out Ukrainian soldiers in Donbas hold off Russian assaults." This article was written by Asami Terajima, the winner of the 2023 George Weidenfeld Prize, awarded for excellent investigative and courageous research activities as part of Germany's prestigious Axel Springer Prize. For this story, she has interviewed soldiers in Donetsk Oblast along the front line to find out how they cope with the aftermath of the Russian invasion a year on, what their hopes and dreams are, and how their look on life has changed. Please consider checking it out. And now for the Kyiv Independent's Investigative Stories from Ukraine newsletter update. Investigative Stories from Ukraine walks you through the most prominent investigations of the past week. This week's stories are Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty maps military facilities in Russian-occupied Crimea. State Watch think tank launches registry of Russian oligarchs' Ukraine assets. Media, family of CEO of Russian missile manufacturer lives lavish life in Czech Republic. And to start the news segment, the updates on the latest Russian drone and missile attack on Ukraine. During the night, air raid sirens sounded throughout Ukraine as Russia launched a drone and missile attack of what is described as exceptional intensity. Ukrainian air defense reportedly shot down all of the 18 Russian missiles including 6 Kinjal ballistic missiles, 9 Caliber cruise missiles launched from warships in the Black Sea, and 3 land-based missiles. Nonetheless, explosions were audible in the city of Kyiv and Cherkasy oblasts. In the capital, 3 people were reportedly injured. Kyiv authorities and the State Emergency Service of Ukraine shared photos of the aftermath of the Russian missile attack on Kyiv. Fragments of intercepted missiles fell in several districts of the capital, causing damage and fires. Bridget Brink, the ambassador of the United States of America to Ukraine, thanked Ukraine's air defense operators for their work. Pro-Russian sources on social media claim that Ukraine did not intercept the Kinjal missiles and instead wasted millions of dollars in air defense missiles just to have a Patriot launcher destroyed anyways. And according to Vladimir Novikov, a pro-Russian militia leader and commander of the Troy detachment, not only a launcher was destroyed, but the entire system, including the radar. Later today, the Russian Ministry of Defense released a statement also claiming a Patriot system was destroyed. However, no additional evidence to its destruction was provided. As proof, this rather long video is being shared on social media. It shows numerous air defense missiles being launched and in the end, a flash presumably in the direction of the launch area. OSINT sources pointed out that the air defense missile fire does not match the usual Patriot firing pattern, and even if so, it would have destroyed only one launcher and not the entire system. However, as you can see from the video, it is absolutely impossible to say what was hit by the explosion, and even if it hit an air defense launch site, the Patriot system is not the only air defense system Ukraine has received from its Western partners. Therefore, I advise to take this claim with a grain of salt. Also, as Tyler Rogoway points out, it is expected that Russia will hunt for Western-provided equipment and target it specifically. It should not come as a surprise that Western equipment will be destroyed in the war. Later today, a US official stated that a Patriot air defense system was likely damaged in the Russian missile attack on Kyiv, but not destroyed as Russia previously claimed. According to the unnamed US official, the extent of the alleged damage to the Patriot missile system is currently being assessed. The assessment is said to determine if the system can be repaired on site or will have to be shipped back to the US. And now the updates on Ukrainian Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal and his delegation's visit to the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe Summit in Iceland. Denis Shmyhal and his team have arrived in Iceland to participate in the 2-day summit, while Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is expected to address the summit via video link. Before the summit started, Shmyhal stated that he believes that the planned creation of a register of damage caused by ongoing Russian aggression will be a real step towards compensation to Ukraine. The president of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, Tini Cox, meanwhile announced that no one will blame Ukraine should the first post-war elections not be perfect. He also believes that after the war it will be necessary to decide how to interact with Russia, but first it will have to prove that it can be trusted. Finally, the president announced that he is planning to visit Ukraine. A look at all the minor updates out of Ukraine. As stated in an earlier report, yesterday a memorial was held in Kyiv to honor AFP journalist Armin Soldin. Ukraine has received the first Italian-French SAMP-T anti-aircraft missile system, which is a long-range air defense system. Yuri Sak, advisor to the Minister of Defense of Ukraine, stated that his country wants between 40 to 50 F-16 fighter jets from its Western allies to form 3 to 4 squadrons. A plenary meeting of Ukraine's Supreme Court has voted to dismiss the court's head, Vsevolod Niaziev, who was earlier detained for allegedly receiving a $3 million bribe. French investigators have arrived in Ukraine for an investigation into the death of AFP journalist Armin Soldin by a Russian missile attack. The European Bank for Reconstruction and Development reported that Ukraine's 5-year recovery period will require additional investments of about $50 billion per year. Next up, the latest regarding the situation in the occupied territories. Petro Andriushchenko, advisor to the Mariupol mayor, reported another large convoy of Russian military equipment moving through Mariupol. In the temporarily occupied territories of Zaporizhia Oblast, the Russian occupation authorities have shifted their focus to private vehicles with Ukrainian license plates. Cars with Ukrainian license plates are detained at checkpoints and the owners persistently persuaded to register the vehicles with the Russian authorities. Vladimir Rogov, head of the Zaporizhia movement We Are Together with Russia, reported heavy shelling of Tokmak by Ukrainian forces. Russian occupation authorities in Zaporizhia Oblast are threatening to cut off the electricity supply to the homes of residents who do not have a Russian passport. Moving on to the news updates from Russia and Belarus. The FSB wants to facilitate the process of carrying out searches. The plan is to allow officers to conduct inspection of premises, buildings, structures, terrain, and vehicles without the need of court orders. The FSB must notify the court of the searches within 24 hours, and one of the heads of the security agency has to make a reasoned decision. The State Duma adopted a law on the denunciation of the Treaty on Conventional Armed Forces in Europe. The final withdrawal from the CFE treaty and its denunciation fully met the national interests of ensuring Russia's security, said Leonid Slutsky. It will be possible to discuss some kind of replacement only after the West abandoned its hostile policy, said Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov. Kirilo Budanov, head of the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine, stated in an interview with Risny Lyudi that 80% of what the leader of the Wagner PMC, Yevgeny Prigozhin, says is pure truth. Budanov further revealed that Yevhen Shevchenko, a member of the Ukrainian parliament, secretly negotiated with the president of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, on behalf of the Ukrainian special services. In Russia, an explosion occurred on a gas pipeline in the Khanty-Mansi Autonomous Okrug. 1 person died and 5 were injured. And to wrap up the news segment, the international developments. French President Emmanuel Macron has announced in an interview that France will send missiles to Ukraine with a range that allows Ukraine to resist Russia. Ukraine has officially joined the NATO Cooperative Cyber Defense Center of Excellence, CCD-COE, and the Ukrainian flag was raised near the headquarters. Located in Tallinn, CCD-COE is a NATO-accredited cybersecurity center and think tank specializing in interdisciplinary applied research, analysis, information exchange, and cyber defense training and exercises. 3 Western officials reported that Ukrainian forces have already started using UK-provided Storm Shadow long-range missiles to hit Russian targets. The officials did not specify when and for what purposes, and Ukraine's defense ministry declined to comment on the matter. Germany's sensor specialist Hensoldt is supplying 6 more of its TRML-4D high-performance radars to strengthen Ukraine's air defenses. And now for the intelligence report segment, starting with the UK Ministry of Defense. Wagner Group forces continue to make gradual progress in clearing Ukrainian positions in the town center of the contested Donetsk Oblast town of Bakhmut. However, over the last 4 days, Ukrainian forces have made tactical progress stabilizing the flanks of Bakhmut to their advantage. As well as progress to the south of town, Ukrainian assaults have forced back the Russian front line to the northwest of the town. This has likely enabled Ukrainian forces to re-establish more secure use of the key 0506 supply road. Ukraine is holding Russia's western advances along the line of Donetsk-Donbas Canal, turning the waterway into an obstacle as part of a deep defensive zone around the town of Chasiv Yar. A look at the latest assessment by the Institute for the Study of War. Leaked US intelligence, accessed by the Washington Post, indicates that Wagner Group financier Yevgeny Prigozhin offered to disclose the locations of Russian positions to Ukrainian intelligence in exchange for Bakhmut. The reports of Prigozhin's offers to cooperate with Ukrainian intelligence triggered a mixed response within Russia. Prigozhin's reported efforts to cooperate with Ukrainian intelligence would have been part of his feud with the Russian Ministry of Defense, MOD, rather than an attack on Russian President Vladimir Putin. The allegations are unlikely to cause the Kremlin to remove Prigozhin in the near term, but can contribute to efforts to discredit Prigozhin. Ukrainian officials acknowledged limited Ukrainian battlefield successes during recent localized counterattacks in and around Bakhmut. Russian mill bloggers uniformly attacked a proposal for military censorship, further indicating that the community is highly motivated to defend its privileged position within the Russian information space. The Russian MOD claimed that it intercepted a Ukrainian Storm Shadow missile for the first time on May 15th. The Kremlin has reportedly banned high-ranking officials from resigning during the war in Ukraine, likely in an attempt to maintain stability within domestic security organs, government bodies, and the Russian military command. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met with French President Emmanuel Macron and UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak on May 14th and 15th, confirming the provision of more Western military aid. And to wrap up the report, the evening update by the General Staff of Ukraine. Today, the Russian Federation launched another massive missile attack on the civilian and critical infrastructure of Ukraine. The Russian aggressor cynically continues to use terror tactics. During this day, the enemy carried out 27 rocket and 37 airstrikes, carried out about 20 attacks from rocket salvo systems on the positions of our troops in populated areas. According to detailed information, the enemy used 6 Kinjal aeroballistic missiles, 9 Caliber cruise missiles, and 10 land-based missiles, S-400 Iskander-M, to launch missile strikes, all of which were destroyed by our defenders. The occupiers fired 2 more S-300 missiles at the civilian infrastructure of Kostiantynivka, Donetsk Oblast. The civil infrastructure was destroyed, in particular as a result of the shelling of the settlements of Dvorichne, Vovchansk, and Tishenkovka of the Kharkiv Oblast. Civilians were killed and wounded, residential private houses, a hospital and other civilian infrastructure were destroyed. The enemy continues to concentrate its main efforts on the Liman, Bakhmut, Avdiivka and Marinka directions. During the day, 44 combat clashes took place on the specified areas of the front. Bakhmut and Marinka continue to be at the epicenter of hostilities. In the Kupiansk direction, the enemy carried out unsuccessful offensive actions in the districts of Mazyotivka, Kharkiv Oblast, and Novoselivske and Stelmakivka, Luhansk Oblast. In the Liman direction, during the day, the enemy carried out offensive actions in the area of Belohorivka, Luhansk Oblast. In the Bakhmut direction, the enemy continues to conduct offensive actions. Heavy fighting continues for Bakhmut. In addition, during the day, the enemy conducted unsuccessful offensive actions in the direction of the settlement of Ivanivske. In the Marinka direction, units of the defense forces repelled numerous enemy attacks in the area of the city of Marinka. The Russian occupiers continue to rob the population of Ukraine, appropriating the grain harvest of peaceful citizens. So, in the city of Feodosia, in the temporarily occupied Crimea, the so-called Russian occupation authorities are trying to take the stolen grain to their ports, loading it onto the sanctioned Syrian ship Surya. And that wraps up the report. Should you be interested in any of the details to any articles mentioned, you can find links to them in the description. If you enjoyed the report and found it informative, please consider sharing it with others and giving me a like. Thank you for tuning in and have a great day. You were listening to The Account. Slava Ukraini.